The church bells tolled like a heartbeat breaking, each chime sinking into Ezra's chest as he stood at the edge of the cemetery. His husband, Caleb, was gone, taken by a car crash that felt like a theft from the universe. At 35, Ezra thought he'd have decades more to love the man who'd been his anchor, his wildfire, his home. The New England autumn was relentless, painting the hills of Concord, Massachusetts, in fiery hues that mocked the gray ache in Ezra's soul. He clutched the eulogy he'd written, the paper creased from sleepless nights. Caleb's laughter, his crooked smile, the way he'd hum off-key to jazz records. Those were the pieces Ezra carried now, heavy as the coffin before him. The funeral was small, intimate, just as Caleb would have wanted. But as Ezra scanned the crowd, his breath caught. For men stood apart, their faces familiar yet out of place, like ghosts summoned from a life he thought he'd left behind. They were Caleb's ex-boyfriends. Ezra recognized them from old photos, stories Caleb had shared in quiet moments. There was Marcus, 32, with a buzz cut and wire-rimmed glasses, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets. Next to him, Devon, 37, with long dreadlocks tied back, his eyes fixed on the ground. Then Julian, 38, tall and broad-shouldered, his salt and pepper hair catching the fading light. And finally, Leo, 34, with a neatly trimmed beard and a colorful scarf that seemed too vibrant for the occasion. They didn't speak to each other, but their presence felt like a conspiracy, a weight Ezra couldn't name. He'd known Caleb for 7 years, married for 3. Caleb had been open about his past, his relationships, his mistakes, his growth. But why were these men here, together, standing like sentinels at the edge of Ezra's grief? And why did their eyes carry a shadow that felt like more than sorrow? The service began, and Ezra stepped forward, his voice trembling as he read the eulogy. Caleb was the kind of man who made you believe in second chances, he said, his words catching on the wind. He loved fiercely, lived boldly, and left a mark on everyone he met. The crowd nodded, some wiping tears, but the 4 men stood still, their faces unreadable. Ezra's gaze lingered on them, a question forming he wasn't ready to ask. After the service, the mourners drifted to a reception at a nearby community hall. But Ezra stayed by the grave, needing a moment alone. The air smelled of damp earth and fallen leaves. He traced the letters on Caleb's headstone. Caleb James Hartley, 1988 to 2025. Beloved husband. The words felt too small for a man who'd been so much larger than life. Ezra? A voice said softly, pulling him from his thoughts. It was Julian, the oldest of the 4, his deep voice steady but laced with something raw. I'm so sorry. Caleb, he was special. Ezra nodded, unsure how to respond. You knew him before, he said, more a statement than a question. Julian's jaw tightened. Yeah, a long time ago. We dated in Boston, back when he was figuring himself out. He hesitated, glancing toward the others, who lingered near a row of oak trees. We all did. Ezra's stomach twisted. All of you? Here? Why? Julian's eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe, or fear. We need to talk, he said. Not here. Not now. But soon. There's something you should know. Before Ezra could press further, Marcus approached, his glasses glinting in the dusk. Ezra, I'm Marcus. I owed it to Caleb to be here. His voice was clipped, like he was holding back a flood. Devon and Leo followed, each offering condolences. But their words felt rehearsed, their eyes darting to one another as if bound by an invisible thread. What's going on? Ezra asked, his voice sharper than he intended. Why are you all here together? The four exchanged glances. A silent conversation Ezra wasn't privy to. Leo, with his scarf fluttering in the breeze, spoke first. Caleb meant a lot to us. More than you might realize. We stayed in touch. Stayed in touch. Ezra's grief sharpened into suspicion. He never mentioned that. There's a reason, Devon said quietly, his dreadlocks swaying as he shifted uncomfortably. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated. Ezra snapped, his hands trembling. My husband is dead. And you're standing here like you know something I don't. Julian stepped closer, his voice low. We do. But this isn't the place. Meet us tonight. The Blue Heron Cafe, 8 p.m. We'll tell you everything. Ezra wanted to demand answers now, to shake the truth out of them. But the weight of the day, the ache of loss held him back. He nodded, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and curiosity. As the four men walked away, their silhouettes blending into the twilight, Ezra felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn air. The Blue Heron Cafe was a cozy spot in downtown Concord, its warm lights spilling onto the cobblestone street. Ezra arrived early, his nerves frayed. The cafe was quiet, save for a few patrons nursing coffee and pie. He chose a corner booth, the same one where he and Caleb had shared their first date, laughing over burnt lattes and dreams of a life together. The four men arrived together, their presence filling the small space with tension. They slid into the booth, their faces a mix of resolve and unease. Julian took the lead, his hands clasped tightly on the table. Ezra, he began, what we're about to tell you, it's not easy. Caleb was a good man, but he wasn't perfect. None of us are. Ezra's throat tightened. Just tell me. Julian took a deep breath. Caleb had a secret, one he kept from you, from everyone he loved after us. It's about something that happened 10 years ago, before you met him. Ezra leaned forward, his heart racing. What kind of secret? Marcus adjusted his glasses, his voice barely above a whisper. It started in Boston in 2015. We were all part of the same circle, friends, lovers, a messy little queer family. Caleb was the center of it, this magnetic force. But he got involved in something dangerous. Dangerous how? Ezra asked, his voice steady despite the storm building inside him. Devon spoke up, his eyes haunted. There was a guy, Vincent. Older, charming, but bad news. He ran an underground gambling ring, drugs, you name it. Caleb got pulled in, first as a courier, then deeper. We all did, in different ways. Ezra's mind reeled. Caleb, his Caleb, involved with criminals? The man who'd spent Sundays volunteering at the community garden, who'd cried watching old rom-coms. It didn't fit. He wanted out, Leo added, his scarf now folded neatly in his lap. But Vincent didn't let people walk away. Caleb did something drastic to get free, and we helped him. What did he do? Ezra's voice was a blade, cutting through the haze. Julian's eyes met his, heavy with regret. He turned Vincent in, gave evidence to the cops. Vincent went to prison, but not before threatening Caleb and all of us. We swore we'd never tell anyone, not even you. Ezra's world tilted. The man he'd loved, the man he'd married, had carried this? A secret so dark it bound these four strangers together. Even now? Why didn't he tell me? Ezra asked, his voice breaking. Because he loved you, Marcus said softly. He wanted to protect you from his past. He thought it was over. But it's not over, Julian said, his voice grim. Vincent's out, released last month. And we think he might have had something to do with Caleb's accident. Ezra's blood ran cold. The crash, the police report calling it a hit and run, the driver never found. It had haunted him. Now it felt like a wound reopening. "We don't have proof," Devon said quickly. "But we've been getting messages. Threats. All of us since Caleb died." Ezra's hands clenched into fists. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because you deserve to know," Leo said. "And because we need your help. Caleb left something behind, a journal, maybe, or evidence. Something that could expose Vincent again. We think it's in your house." Ezra stared at them, his grief colliding with anger, fear, and a desperate need for answers. Caleb's past was unraveling, and with it, the life Ezra thought he knew. But one thing was clear: he wouldn't let Caleb's death be in vain. "I'll find it," he said, his voice steady now. "But you're coming with me. All of you." The drive to Ezra's house felt like a descent into a storm. The quiet streets of Concord, lined with colonial homes and glowing streetlights, seemed to mock the chaos in his mind. He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, as Julian, Marcus, Devon, and Leo sat in tense silence in the back seat of his SUV. The weight of their revelation pressed against him. Caleb's hidden past, the criminal he betrayed, the possibility that his death wasn't an accident. Ezra's home, once a sanctuary of love and laughter, now felt like a puzzle box hiding truths he wasn't sure he wanted to uncover. They arrived at the modest two-story house on Hawthorne Lane, its white clapboard exterior glowing faintly under the moonlight. Ezra led them inside, the familiar creak of the front door, a painful reminder of Caleb's absence. The living room smelled of cedar and old books, a space where he and Caleb had spent countless evenings curled up together. Now it felt like a crime scene. "Where do we start?" Marcus asked, his glasses fogging slightly in the warm indoor air. Ezra's eyes scanned the room, the bookshelf stuffed with Caleb's jazz records, the coffee table cluttered with unopened mail, the framed photo of their wedding day. "I don't know," he admitted. Caleb was private about some things. If he hid something, it'd be somewhere personal. Julian stepped forward, his presence steadying. "He always loved hiding things in plain sight. Remember that old typewriter he was obsessed with?" Ezra's heart twinged. The typewriter, a vintage Underwood, sat on a desk in Caleb's study. He'd bought it at a flea market, claiming it was a piece of history. Ezra had teased him about it, but Caleb would spend hours tinkering with it, typing nonsense just to hear the clack of the keys. The group moved to the study, a small room lined with books and sketches Caleb had drawn. Cityscapes, faces, abstract swirls. The typewriter sat on a mahogany desk, its black keys gleaming. Ezra ran his fingers over it, feeling the cold metal. "He loved this thing," he murmured. Devon, standing by the window, glanced over. "Check the ribbon. He used to hide notes in weird places like that." Ezra hesitated, then lifted the typewriter's cover. The ribbon was old, frayed, but as he turned it, a small, folded piece of paper slipped out. His heart raced as he unfolded it. In Caleb's messy scrawl were the words, "If you're reading this, I'm sorry. Look in the attic." Box labeled vinyl. The air in the room shifted, thick with anticipation. "The attic," Ezra said, his voice barely above a whisper. He led them upstairs, the wooden steps creaking under their weight. The attic was cramped, filled with boxes of old clothes, holiday decorations, and Caleb's beloved vinyl collection. They found the box labeled vinyl, tucked in a corner, its edges worn. Inside, beneath a stack of records, was a leather-bound journal. Ezra's hands trembled as he opened it. The pages were filled with Caleb's handwriting, dates, names, cryptic notes. One entry, dated a month before his death, stood out. Vincent's out. He knows. I can't let him hurt Ezra. Ezra's throat closed. He was protecting me, he said, his voice breaking. Even at the end. Leo, standing close, put a hand on his shoulder. He always did. That's why he never told you. Marcus flipped through the journal, his brow furrowed. This has details, dates, places, even a contact in the Boston PD who helped him take Vincent down. If we can get this to the right people, it could put Vincent away again. But we need to be careful, Julian warned. Vincent's not just some thug. He's connected. And if he's watching us. A sudden thud from downstairs made them freeze. The sound was sharp, like a door slamming. Ezra's pulse spiked. Did anyone lock the front door? He asked. The four exchanged glances, their faces pale. Stay here, Julian said, but Ezra shook his head. This is my house, my husband's life. I'm coming. They crept downstairs, the journal clutched tightly in Ezra's hands. The living room was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. A shadow moved near the kitchen, and Ezra's heart stopped. Who's there? He called, his voice steadier than he felt. A figure stepped into the light. A man in his late 40s, with slicked back hair and a cruel smile. Evening, gentlemen, he said, his voice smooth as oil. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Vincent, Devon whispered, his voice laced with fear. Ezra's grip on the journal tightened. This was the man who'd haunted Caleb's past, who might have taken his future. Anger surged through him, but so did fear. Vincent's eyes gleamed with a predator's calm, and Ezra knew they were in danger. You're not getting this, Ezra said, holding up the journal. Caleb stopped you once. We'll do it again. Vincent's smile widened. Brave words. But Caleb's not here to save you now. Before anyone could react, Julian lunged, tackling Vincent to the ground. The room erupted into chaos. Shouts, the crash of furniture, the frantic scramble to help. Ezra clutched the journal, his mind racing. They had to get out, get the journal to the police, but Vincent wasn't alone. Another figure appeared at the back door, a hulking man with a scar across his cheek. Run, Marcus yelled, grabbing Ezra's arm. They bolted for the front door, Devon and Leo close behind. Julian wrestled with Vincent, buying them time. Ezra's heart pounded as they spilled onto the lawn, the night air cold against his skin. They reached the SUV, but as Ezra fumbled with the keys, headlights flared down the street. A black sedan screeched to a stop, blocking their path. Two more men stepped out, their faces hidden in shadow. We're trapped, Leo said, his voice shaking. Ezra's mind raced. The journal was their only leverage, but it was also a death sentence if Vincent got it. He looked at the four men beside him, strangers bound by Caleb's past, now fighting for his legacy. We're not giving up, he said. Caleb didn't. Neither will we. The headlights burned into Ezra's eyes, pinning him and the others in place like prey. The black sedan idled ominously, its engine a low growl against the quiet Concord night. Ezra clutched Caleb's journal, its leather cover slick with his sweat. As the two men from the car approached, their silhouettes menacing. Behind him, Julian stumbled out of the house, blood trickling from a cut on his lip, Vincent's shouts echoing from inside. We need to move, Devon whispered, his dreadlocks brushing Ezra's shoulder as he scanned for an escape. The street was a dead end, their SUV blocked. The only way out was through the narrow alley beside Ezra's house, leading to a wooded path that snaked toward the town center. Ezra's mind raced, piecing together a plan. "The alley," he said, his voice low but firm. "We can lose them in the woods." Leo, his scarf now torn, nodded. "Go. I'll distract them." "No," Ezra snapped. "We stay together." Caleb would have wanted that. Marcus adjusted his glasses, his voice urgent. "Then we run. Now." They sprinted for the alley, the crunch of gravel under their feet drowned out by Vincent's voice yelling orders from the house. The two men from the sedan gave chase, their footsteps heavy and relentless. Ezra's lungs burned as they reached the woods, the dense trees swallowing the moonlight. Branches clawed at his face, but he didn't stop, the journal tucked under his arm like a lifeline. They wove through the pines, the path uneven and treacherous. Julian, still shaken from his fight with Vincent, took the lead, his long strides guiding them deeper into the forest. "There's a clearing up ahead," he panted. "We can hide there, figure out our next move." The clearing was small, ringed by towering oaks, the ground carpeted with fallen leaves. They crouched behind a cluster of boulders, catching their breath. Ezra's heart pounded, not just from the run but from the weight of Caleb's secret now in his hands. The journal held evidence, names, dates, transactions that could destroy Vincent. But it also painted a picture of a Caleb Ezra hadn't fully known, a man who'd fought to escape a dangerous past only to be hunted by it. "Do you think they're still following?" Leo asked, his voice barely audible. Devon peered through the trees, his eyes sharp. "They're close. I heard footsteps." Ezra opened the journal, flipping to a page Caleb had marked with a red asterisk. It detailed a meeting in 2015, where Caleb had handed over evidence to a detective named Carla Ruiz. "If we can find Ruiz," Ezra said, "she might help us." She knew Caleb's case. Marcus nodded, pulling out his phone. "I'll look her up. If she's still in Boston, we can reach her by morning." But before Marcus could search, a twig snapped nearby, sharp as a gunshot. The group froze. Vincent's voice cut through the darkness, chillingly calm. "You can't run forever, Ezra. That journal won't save you." Ezra's blood ran cold. How had Vincent found them so fast? He glanced at the others, their faces pale but determined. Julian whispered, "We split up. It'll confuse them. Meet at the old mill by the river in an hour." Ezra hesitated, hating the idea of separating, but Julian's eyes were fierce. "Trust us. We owe Caleb this." Reluctantly, Ezra nodded. They scattered, each taking a different path through the woods. Ezra clutched the journal, his legs pumping as he darted toward the river. The sound of pursuit faded, but his fear didn't. Caleb had trusted these men once, and now Ezra had to trust them too. Not just with his life, but with the truth Caleb had died for. An hour later, Ezra reached the abandoned mill, its weathered timbers looming against the starry sky. The Concord River murmured nearby, a soothing contrast to the chaos in his mind. He hid behind a rusted machine, waiting. One by one, the others arrived, Julian first, then Marcus, Devon, and finally Leo, his scarf gone, his face scratched but resolute. "Did you lose them?" Ezra asked. Julian nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "For now. But Vincent's not giving up." Marcus held up his phone. "I found Carla Ruiz. She's a sergeant now, works out of BPD's District A1. I sent her a message, said it's about Caleb. She replied, she'll meet us tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., at a diner in Boston." Ezra exhaled, relief mingling with dread. What do we do until then? We hide, Devon said. There's a safe house, an old friend's place in Lexington. We used it back in the day, when things with Vincent got bad. The group piled into Ezra's SUV, the journal now stashed in a backpack at Ezra's feet. The drive to Lexington was silent, each man lost in his thoughts. Ezra glanced at Julian in the passenger seat, his strong profile softened by the dashboard's glow. You loved him too, didn't you? Ezra asked quietly. Julian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. We all did in our own way. Caleb had that effect on people. Ezra's heart ached, not with jealousy but with a strange gratitude. Caleb's love had been a gift, shared across lives, binding them even now. But the danger wasn't over, and the journal's secrets were a ticking clock. The safe house was a small cabin tucked in a wooded lot, its windows dark. Inside, it was sparse but warm, with a couch, a kitchenette, and a single bedroom. They took turns keeping watch, the night stretching long and tense. Ezra couldn't sleep, his mind replaying Caleb's journal entries. One stood out, written a week before the crash. I saw him today. Vincent. He knows where we live. I can't lose Ezra. Tears stung Ezra's eyes. Caleb had faced this alone, shielding him even as the past closed in. Now it was Ezra's turn to fight, for justice, for closure, for the man he'd loved. As dawn broke, they prepared to leave for Boston. But as they stepped outside, a car idled across the street, its tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. Ezra's stomach dropped. Vincent had found them again. The car's engine purred like a predator waiting to strike. Ezra froze, the journal heavy in his backpack, as the tinted windows of the vehicle across the street reflected the pale morning light. Julian grabbed his arm, pulling him back into the safe house. That's Vincent's crew, he whispered. We need another way out. Inside, the group huddled, their faces tight with fear. Marcus, ever the planner, pointed to the back door. There's a path through the woods. It leads to a gas station a mile out. We can call a cab from there to Boston. Devon shook his head, his dreadlocks swaying. They'll be watching the roads. We need to split up again. Make it harder for them to follow. No, Ezra said, his voice firm. We stick together. Caleb's journal is our only shot at ending this. If we scatter, they'll pick us off one by one. Leo, his face still scratched from the night before, nodded. Ezra's right. We're stronger together. Let's move. They slipped out the back door, keeping low as they entered the woods. The air was crisp, the dawn light filtering through the trees. Every rustle made Ezra's heart race, but they pressed on, the gas station their beacon. After what felt like hours, they reached it, a rundown station with a single pump and a flickering neon sign. Marcus called a cab, his voice steady despite the tension. The cab ride to Boston was a blur, the journal burning a hole in Ezra's thoughts. He flipped through its pages, finding more of Caleb's confessions. I never told Ezra about Vincent because I wanted him to have a life free of fear. But I was wrong. The past always catches up. At the diner, a no-frills spot in Boston's North End, Sergeant Carla Ruiz waited in a corner booth. She was in her late 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Ezra slid into the booth, the others crowding around. He handed her the journal, his hands trembling. This was Caleb's, he said. It's everything he knew about Vincent. Ruiz skimmed the pages, her expression darkening. I remember Caleb, she said. Brave kid, but scared out of his mind when he came to me. This is enough to reopen the case. But Vincent's got friends in high places. We need to move fast. Ezra leaned forward. You think Vincent caused Caleb's crash? Ruiz's jaw tightened. It's possible. The hit and run was too clean, no witnesses, no skid marks. I'll need time to dig. But this journal is a start. As they spoke, Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling. It's a text. From Vincent. He says, "Give me the journal or Ezra's next." Ezra's blood ran cold. The diner's chatter faded, the world narrowing to the threat in Julian's hand. "He knows we're here," Ezra said, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. Ruiz stood, her hand on her radio. "I'm calling for backup. You stay here, keep low. I'll get this journal to the station." But as she stepped outside, the screech of tires shattered the morning. A black SUV roared up, and Vincent himself stepped out, flanked by two men. Ezra's heart stopped. There was no time to wait for backup. "Get to the back," Devin shouted, pulling Ezra toward the kitchen. The group scrambled through the diner, patrons staring in confusion. They burst into the alley behind the restaurant, only to find one of Vincent's men waiting, a gun gleaming in his hand. "Hand it over," the man growled, his scar catching the light. Ezra clutched the journal, his mind racing. He thought of Caleb, his laugh, his courage, his love. "No," he said, his voice fierce. "You don't get to win." Before the man could react, Julian tackled him, the gun skidding across the pavement. Marcus grabbed it, his hands shaking but resolute. "Go!" he yelled. They ran, weaving through Boston's narrow streets, Vincent's men in pursuit. Ezra's lungs burned, but he didn't stop. The journal was Caleb's legacy, a chance to right the wrongs of the past. They ducked into a crowded market, blending with the morning shoppers. For a moment they were safe. "We can't keep running," Leo panted, his face flushed. "We need to end this." Ezra nodded, an idea forming. Ruiz said she needed time. "We give her that. We draw Vincent out, keep him distracted." Julian's eyes narrowed. "A trap." "Exactly," Ezra said. "We use the journal as bait. Lure him somewhere public, somewhere Ruiz can catch him." They chose Faneuil Hall, a bustling tourist spot where Vincent couldn't act without drawing attention. Marcus sent a message to Vincent, claiming they'd trade the journal for their safety. It was a risk, but Ezra felt Caleb's strength guiding him. This was for him. Faneuil Hall buzzed with life. Tourists snapping photos, vendors hawking souvenirs, the air thick with the scent of pretzels and coffee. Ezra stood near the central fountain, the journal hidden in his backpack, his heart pounding like a war drum. Julian, Marcus, Devin, and Leo fanned out, blending into the crowd but close enough to act. Their plan was simple. Lure Vincent into the open, keep him talking until Ruiz's backup arrived. But simplicity didn't ease the fear gnawing at Ezra's chest. Vincent appeared at the edge of the plaza, his slicked back hair unmistakable. He was alone, his confidence unnerving. Ezra stepped forward, raising his voice. "You want the journal? Come and get it." The crowd parted, sensing the tension. Vincent's smile was cold, his eyes locked on Ezra. "You're brave like Caleb, but bravery didn't save him." Ezra's blood boiled, but he held his ground. "You don't scare me, Vincent. Caleb took you down once. We'll do it again." Vincent laughed, stepping closer. "You think that journal will save you? It's just paper. I'm the one who writes the endings." Before Ezra could respond, Julian signaled from the crowd, a subtle nod. Ruiz's team was in position, plainclothes officers weaving through the tourists. Ezra just had to keep Vincent distracted. "Why Caleb?" he asked, his voice raw. "Why take him from me?" Vincent's smile faded, A flicker of something, regret, maybe, crossing his face. Caleb made a choice. He betrayed me. Loyalty has a price. And what about us? Ezra said, gesturing to the others, who were closing in. You think we'll just let you walk away? Vincent's eyes darted, sensing the trap. He reached for his pocket, but before he could act, Ruiz's voice cut through the air. Vincent Moretti, you're under arrest. Officers swarmed, pinning Vincent to the ground. The crowd gasped, phones raised to capture the scene. Ezra handed the journal to Ruiz, his hands shaking but his heart steady. This is everything, he said. Caleb's truth. Ruiz nodded, her eyes warm. You did good, Ezra. Caleb would be proud. As Vincent was led away in cuffs, Ezra felt the weight of the past week lift, if only slightly. The journal had exposed Vincent's crimes, drug deals, extortion, and now, a possible link to Caleb's death. Ruiz promised a full investigation, but for Ezra it wasn't just about justice. It was about honoring Caleb's courage, his love, his fight. The 4 ex-boyfriends gathered around him, their faces a mix of relief and grief. Julian spoke first, his voice soft. We're sorry, Ezra, for keeping this from you. For everything. Ezra looked at them. Marcus with his quiet strength, Devin with his haunted eyes, Leo with his fierce loyalty, Julian with his steady heart. They were Caleb's past, but they'd become Ezra's allies, his family in this fight. You loved him too, he said. That's enough. They stood together as the crowd dispersed, the sun high over Faneuil Hall. Ezra thought of Caleb, the man who'd loved jazz, who'd fought for a better life, who'd protected him even in death. The pain of his loss would never fade, but neither would the love. In the weeks that followed, Vincent was charged with multiple counts, including conspiracy to commit murder. The journal's evidence was damning, and Ruiz's team uncovered a paper trail linking him to the hit and run. It wasn't closure, not fully, but it was a start. Ezra kept the journal, its pages a testament to Caleb's strength. He started a community fund in Caleb's name, supporting queer youth in Concord, giving them the second chances Caleb had believed in. The 4 ex-boyfriends stayed in touch, their bond forged in loss but strengthened by hope. One evening, Ezra sat by Caleb's grave, the autumn leaves now gone, replaced by winter's first frost. He traced the headstone's epitaph. In love, we are eternal. You kept us safe, he whispered. Now it's my turn to keep you alive. He stood, the journal tucked under his arm, and walked into the dusk, carrying Caleb's love, his secrets, and the promise of a future worth fighting for.